this I wrote a while back, like you said. But what it does is that this article. Pass me one of them. Okay.
You have to say to the camera what this is.
Okay, right. This is an article you can find on the website. It's actually on the home page on the website right now, because it's right before Tisha B'Av. But basically, it's on the website, and the article is called "Defining Sinat Chinum," and it's Insight 57-57-22. And basically, it presents a different approach to Sinat Chinum. Okay, most people translate Sinat Chinum as baseless hatred, causeless hatred. You shouldn't hate, right?
Like no reason for hate.
No hate for it. I translate it differently. My translation is purposeless hatred. Okay? Now let's look at the case of this. Famous case, purposeless hatred. Okay? What that means is that it's not based upon what led to the hatred, it's how you deal with the hatred. Okay? And that's what the show is going to be about. What is this idea? Let me just point out, if you know the famous story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa, what happened to Kamsa Bar Kamsa? The famous reason for why the Beis Mikdash was destroyed. What was the story? What?
Bar Kamsa didn't invite him, or he did invite him to his party that he had, and then and he said, you're not invited to the party, what are you doing here?
Right.
So God, please, when you say it's like, no, get out of my party, what are you doing here? You're not invited, these are my
So what happens is...
out the party first, and then all the party, and then...
Like,
so if you think about this...
Don't embarrass me.
If you think about this...
And then he's tale-bearing to the Romans on something.
Right.
They put this statue in the temple.
Well, actually, what they did. It's another thing is what he did is, and maybe this is worthwhile saying, is that the host invited. Let me get this right. Whether it's Kamsa or Bar Kamsa. Yeah, the fact is, he sent it. It's one of the two, and he sent it to one of them. Yeah. It went to one of them. He wanted the other one, and the one he got, he really didn't like. So what happens is this individual is really, really embarrassed. He gets so angry about that, and the Rabbanan didn't do anything to get involved. So he gets angry at the Rabbanan. So what he decides to do is he goes to Rome and informs the Caesar that the Jews are rebelling. Now, the Caesar of Rome used to send a korban every day to the Beis Mikdash. Okay? Now, because you're allowed to accept a korban from a non-Jew. So the Caesar of Rome used to send a korban to the Beis Mikdash, supposedly. Anyways, the point is that the Caesar sent his korban. What this guy did is that he did a mum on the korban, a blemish on the korban. That is ma'akev in terms of halacha. In other words, this animal can no longer be sacrificed on the base in the Beis Mikdash. But vis-a-vis the avodah zarah, vis-a-vis the idolaters, they didn't hold it to be a mum. So this animal was puzzled for the Beis Mikdash, but in the eyes of the Romans, there was no reason for it. So the question emerged: what are we going to do? So they say, even though it has a mum, the Romans aren't going to believe it. It doesn't have a mum. You don't want to offer a sacrifice from our Caesar. Now, why would you want to offer a sacrifice from our Caesar? Why would you want to do it? Because it seems to be that even the idolaters understood that the Jewish God was powerful. So they wanted that sacrifice to the Jewish God to be on his good side. So they thought the Jews will want us not sacrificing to their God because they want to rebel. This is the whole argument of it. Now, there's a very interesting shadow, and Ramosha points this out as well. The Gemara says something very, very fascinating over there. The Gemara in Gittin says it's nothing to do with this, but it just shows you have to be careful with your midot, and that midot are not always black and white. That's why even when I talk tonight, it's nice to hate is always bad. Fact of the matter is that it's caused baseless hatred, causeless hatred. I mean, the fact is, the story I'm trying to tell with Kamsa Bar Kamsa, if you really think about it, did this guy have baseless hatred? Did he have a causeless hatred? This guy was so embarrassed. You think his hatred had no reason? He had a pretty good reason for getting upset.
It's not his hatred we're worried about. It's the other guy that caused it.
No. It was the hatred of the guy who
who wanted to embarrass him, not of the guy who was embarrassed.
No, I thought that's interesting. I didn't think you're saying it's a hatred from the guy. We don't know why he wanted to embarrass him.
Did we?
We don't know why.
I thought we.
That's interesting. I thought the
maybe
truth
he was drunk. I thought
the fact is
part of the oppositional government.
The party.
I'm not sure, but the fact I don't know. But that's an interesting viewpoint because I always looked at it. That the case of Kamsan Bar Kamsa, the guy who did all the actions, his anger, his upsetness was legitimate. Yeah. What he did wrong was how he acted upon it. Yeah. Right? Okay. Because what was he angry at? He was angry at Chazal. He was angry at the rabbis for not speaking up. So what should have you done? That's what we're going to get to. But the point is, it's very, very different. When you're talking about baseless hatred, you're saying you shouldn't hate, which is a very nice, a nice idea. Like, especially in our world today. We love peace. Right? So Israel should stop attacking Gaza because we want peace. Well, the fact they'll try to kill us anyways, but that doesn't matter. The point is that there's certain terms, love, peace, and so on. But the point is that in our understanding, it's not the hatred. It's not the fact that hatred is. Hatred has times when you're supposed to have negative feelings towards certain things. Was that negative feelings towards evil? There's a concept of Sinat towards people who are evil. Okay, and there's a concept of Sinat towards. You have to be very careful about who those people are, but there's a concept of Sinat towards when it's proper. But the point is it has to be. You have to know how to deal with it. So I always understood the story of Kamsan Bar Kamsa, but you didn't know what to do with it. Your idea that it was the guy who was so hateful it was the host who's the story of the hatred. It's an interesting look at it also. The truth of the matter is the statement of Sinat Chinum is actually found in Mon Jun. The story Kamsan Bar Kamsa is actually found in the story Gittin. But there's something interesting I want to point out to Lori Gittin. And Moshe points this out. Moshe Feinstein points this out. It says in the Gemara over there, this animal had this mum on it, and they didn't know what to do. The question is, should they not sacrifice it or sacrifice it? Right? Why? Well, it can't be sacrificed because it has a mum. An animal with a mum can't be sacrificed. Because they knew that this was the sacrifice from the Caesar. So what's the other option? What would be the other option?
Shoot it.
What?
So tell them that's illegible.
No, they didn't buy it because in their Avodah Zarah was.
They could have switched it.
If they could have tried to switch it, but the truth of the matter is
anyway.
The core is to sacrifice it anyway. Why would you sacrifice it anyway?
For the Gentiles, not for the Jews.
No. Why would you sacrifice it anyway?
Pikuach nefesh.
Pikuach nefesh.
Yeah.
What do you mean? The Caesar. We have a concept called Mibnei Eva, that says that there's certain things you're allowed to do because you're concerned of developing hatred among non-Jews because it would because it would have consequences very negative to the Jewish people on a very communal sense. So the point is, it's because they Mibnei Eva. They should have sacrificed Pikuach nefesh. The Caesar will get upset and cause tremendous havoc to the Jewish people. Right. So the question emerges: why didn't they do it? So there was a Tana. I forget his name now. I forget his name. But he said, we can't make that kind of decision. That's a real tough decision. That's being accurate. That's saying we have to go against the Torah. He says we're not on a level to make that kind of decision. And because of that, so the Gemara says what? Fascinating statement. B'nei anivas of this individual.
We died.
Machriv, the Beis Midrash was Machriv. What's anivas?
Humble.
Humility.
Well, it was false.
Anivas. No, it was honest humility. Humility is generally considered to be a good value. But if you're humble, when you shouldn't be humble, if you're saying, who am I to make that decision, who am I to do that, when really, there's a place where you have to step forward and do it. Okay, when there's no one else, you got to do it.
Humble and showing weakness, like being.
There's times where you have to sit there and say, no. I have to step up to the plate. I have to do the job. And the more
your kindness is going to be taken for weakness.
Right. So he says over there, the Gemara in Gittin actually says because of the anivas, the Beis Mikdash was makrif. So the point is we have to know when we have to have a little bit of ego. We know who we are and so forth. Anyways, okay. So my argument is I'm going to argue. And by the way, I like your shot of what you're saying. Okay, it never dawned on me there was the hatred of the host, but I like that. Okay, but the fact is that the Gemara says Sinat Chinum, and my idea of Sinat Chinum is purposeless hatred. Now, where do I get this from? So the truth of the matter is, what exactly is the issur of hatred? Is there any issur of hating someone?
Yes. Is it a mitzvah or like a mitzvah?
No, that's a mitzvah to destroy them. But is there any mitzvah? I'm talking among Jews. Is there any mitzvah connected to hate? Are you allowed to hate a Jew?
No. Hate a Jew?
What? What says? Perhaps the Reicha Kamocha tells you you love the Jew. So is there? So you be mevatel and that say if you hate, okay? Al tamid dem riecha. That's not really hate. It means you're supposed to care. But is there a pasuk that speaks about hate? So there actually is a pasuk, okay? Okay, but it's not. It's Vayikra. The pasuk is you should not hate your friend in your heart. It's a pasuk in Vayikra, okay, 1917. Okay, now it says you should not hate. You should not hate your friend in your heart. It's a lo taseh. The truth of it. So what does it mean?
In your heart.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Okay, so the Rambam seems to hold that is you're not allowed to hate and only maintain it in your heart. If you really don't like someone, you should show that you really don't like them.
You don't like
right. Now, do we have a case of that? Is there a famous case of that? We actually, if you learn Chumash, and you learn Chumash in Parshat Bereishis, there's a famous praise of certain individuals because they didn't like someone, and they made it clear that they didn't like him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yosef and the brothers. It says that the brothers didn't go lovey-dovey with Yosef. Yosef didn't go back and talk with behind his back. It was very obvious that they had a very strong negative feeling towards Yosef.
Does that mean if we have a negative feeling to someone?
So the point is according to the Rambam, okay, he's not advocating that you should hate people because there is a mitzvah to say of a house of Reicha Kamocha, which has to be understood what that means. We're not getting into that tonight. But the fact is that there's a specific thing that if you hate someone, right, you should not try to hide it. You should not try and
say it openly.
Well,
better.
You should be clear. Like you shouldn't be lovey-dovey to the person. You should be.
You shouldn't be a backstabber.
Exactly, a backstabber.
You shouldn't do it behind their back.
Well, the fact is that you're not. It's supposed to be out in the open.
Yeah, because the Torah's always been against sneakiness.
Right. So there's an aspect of being sneaky there. So it should be out in the open. So the point is that if it's out in the open, okay. By the way, for the people on the web, there's actually two parts to this. So get both part 1, part 2. It's Sinat Chinum. Okay. There's actually 2 parts. The fact is according to the Rambam, and a lot of people hold that the mitzvah of Sinah is specifically when you are two-faced. But if you are straightforward and you have an idea of you're honest and so forth and so forth, you're not over that avera. Now the fact is though is the Shiltus Rav Chai Gaon doesn't say that, doesn't define it that way. He defines it even in one's heart. He says that don't hate someone even in your heart, okay? So the machlokas is if you're very open about it. You go up to someone and smack him. Okay, so according to the Rambam, you're being honest, you hit him, okay, so you're not over the severa. According to Shiltus, you're over the severa, and you're over it even if you're being sneaky. Now, the truth is, though, is that if you look at the continuation of the pasuk, there's another side to this. Okay, the pasuk says, "Hochiach tachiach et amisecha." What does that mean? Hochiach tachiach et amisecha. Rebuke your neighbor. Now, what does that mean? So okay. Okay, so the truth is that it seems to be, okay, that what is going on over here is that if all hatred is forbidden, then it's just another. If it's just another commandment to review. But if it's one mitzvah, if it's one verse, then it's connected. And the connected says that this is the idea. What should you do if you have negative feelings towards your friend? Don't hate the person in your heart. Okay, or even in your heart, according to the Shiltas. How do you rectify that? By confronting him. And how do you confront him? Because the idea is why is it that you would hate a person? Because he did something wrong to you. Because he wronged you. So the point is, you should respond to him and say, you know something? You did something wrong to me. Okay? And that's really what happens over here. If that person in the Kamsa Bar Kamsa story was upset with the Chachamim, doesn't run to Rome and say, I'll go punish with Rome. Confront them. Say, now, with a Rabbi, in certain ways, there's questions, how do you approach the person? There's questions of language and so forth, because you still have to have a certain amount of covet in that situation. But even with parents, there's a way of how to confront it. But the fact is, if you're upset, Tochiach says there's a way of approaching someone. So rather than harboring ill feelings, telling someone to go, rebuking someone is a way of bringing your ill feelings out of yourself and starting the process of trying to work things out, because communication works things out. Okay? So it seems to be that this is why I say that there's an aspect of purposeless here. The hatred that you just hold on to yourself, that you sit there and say, I'm just going to hate, and I'm going to sit there and it's going to cause me to go do something else. I'm going to do something else. That's hatred that you're not taking to any purpose. If this negative feeling drives you to confront the individual and basically open up communication, then the negative feeling has actually led to a positive possibility. Okay, so that seems to be the aspect of it. But I think there's a little bit more to that. Okay, so let me take it to the next step. What do you think happens when you confront that individual? Okay, what do you think happens?
Can either go really well because of the
get into some drama,
or the situation you get into Johnny drama.
So if that person basically can respond very negatively to you.
Yes.
So the truth is, if you look in the halachas of Tochacha, there are actually limitations on the mitzvah Tochacha.
Right.
There's ways, if you're going to confront an individual, there's ways you have to know how to do it. Okay, and if you're not going to be able to do it that way, obviously it's not going to lead anywhere. So the truth is you should. The idea being is that what it's saying to you is, if you feel negative feelings because you've been hurt, okay, the way you should respond is by confronting the individual. But you have to confront the individual in the proper fashion, because otherwise it's not going to go anywhere. Okay? So therefore, what's really the obligation? To try and take the steps necessary to be able to bring out your negative feelings in a way that could lead to a positive conclusion. That's why I say the idea of purposeless hatred. What is Sinat Chinum? Sinat Chinum then becomes you just being angry, or you just being full of hate and just wanting to hurt. That doesn't go anywhere. That doesn't go anywhere. The real thing is that if you have these negative feelings, if you really have negative feelings, what you're supposed to do is say, okay, I should really confront that individual and maybe work it out. Then comes the next step. If trying to work it out, I have to figure out how I'm going to confront him. So there's aspects I mentioned before about covet, if you're speaking to someone who's deserving of covet, but there's also ways of knowing how to approach someone. You know, how it's possible to bring up an issue. Okay, now the truth is it's a very strong challenge. The mitzvah of Tochacha can only be done by some who has thought about how to do it. Okay, now, there's another step to this though.
So don't do it unless you know how to approach it.
And therefore the mitzvah is try to be able to do it. Right? You should learn how to do it. Now, there's another side to this, and this is pointed out by the Malbim. If you do it correctly, and you go up to someone who understands that receiving tochacha has a value. In other words, you go up to someone and say, listen, you hurt my feelings. A lot of people respond, well, thank you for doing it. I didn't want to hurt your feelings. Right? Now, what else happens at that point in time? So the Malbim says something very interesting. He says that when you go up to someone and say you're angry with him because he's hurt you, there's a strong possibility the person will defend himself and say, you know something, I did that for this and this reason, and the truth is you already did something to me beforehand that led to this result. When you open up in terms of communication, what often happens is that you open up communication getting the other person to say, I'm sorry. In the end, though, you end up saying you're sorry. Because you understand that that person acted that way because you did something beforehand that caused this whole sequence. So when you approach people and speak to people and confront them, what happens is the possibility that you may learn something about yourself. So the Malbim points out that in the call of Hocheach Tochiach is also a call upon you to be one accepting of Tochacha. In other words, if you can't dish it out, if you can't take it, maybe you shouldn't be the one dishing it out. The truth is you should try dishing it out. In other words, there's a command to dishing it out, so before you dish it out, you should be able to take it. So the truth is, if you are someone who is going to give Tochacha, you should understand that prior to that, you should be someone who says, you know something? I know that I need Tochacha.
Well, what's Tochacha?
Rebuke. Okay? So if you're going to go up to someone and say, I think you should do tshuva, you have to be someone who's willing to understand that you may have a need to do tshuva. So really behind this whole idea is this duality. That the fact is yes, you do get upset. People do get upset. For legitimate reasons. For why people get upset. Okay? And you may be wrong. Rather than holding on to this idea of being wrong, of being wronged, okay, you should be able to, you're told, well, listen, don't hold it in your heart, okay, confront the person. In confronting the person, you should know how to confront the person, okay, be able to articulate it in a way that will try and create a communication, a dialogue. In that process of knowing how to create that dialogue, you should also recognize that it may come back to tell you that you did something wrong. And you have to look at it yourself. Okay? Now, if you look at it in that way, it becomes an idea that if you're in this process of dealing with these kind of emotions in a proper way, then what's going to happen is the furthering of relationships. Okay? It may start off with a negativity, but if you actually communicate with another person, in the end, you can actually walk away with some type of relationship.